Hello, namaste, and welcome to this little talk. This time I would like to talk about three words that are often used together. The Hebrew words for light, for love, and for unity. Usually the word just for one, implying unity and oneness in linguistic Kabbalah. I'll be talking about the words in their Hebrew form, because my talks are usually about Kabbalah, which is linguistic mysticism. So it's all about the meaning and the implications of the Hebrew alphabet and the Hebrew letters, their shapes, their numbers, and their sequences within words. But my trains of thought will, as always, be mystical in general, and in my case, usually Shivite, because I am a Shivite. So both of these three words basically express the same thing. They express the unfolding of the Godhead, they express the unity of the Godhead, and they express the process of creation. Now, the first word I was mentioning is the word for light. Now, in Hebrew, the word for light contains three letters. The Aleph, which is the first letter of the alphabet, then the Vav, which is the sixth letter of the alphabet, and then the Resh, which is the 20th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Now, the Aleph, as the first, is the proper first letter for the concept of the light, of the original light, of the primordial light. The Aleph, morphologically, so its shape is like a comma at the top, a comma at the bottom, and then a stripe diagonally across. Often kabbalistically, mystically described as two brains, and as such linked to Manasarovar, the lake of the mind, the lake of Brahma's mind, the mind of the creator, the Hindu creator, situated in Tibet, close to Mount Kailash, with the stripe in between being as a letter the Vav, which is also the second letter of the word for light, or but also a mirror, because the concept of creation in Kabbalah mostly, and in a mystical sense in general, is not so much a creating process, as in the one creates a two, but is a process of reflection. Literally self-reflection. Now, this is one of the reasons why self-reflection in spiritual practice is so important. But in a Kabbalistic sense, it really means that that which comes forth, creation as we know it, as we experience it, is really just a reflection of unity. So as such, the duality that we perceive and that we live, and that is a blessing in its own right, is not really happening inside that letter yet. So the letter Aleph, as the alphabet, so the first letter, always points at the one, the unity of life, the unity of God, and according to medieval Kabbalistic terminology, also the unmoved mover. So even though we're talking about a process of creation, in essence, within the unmoved mover, within the Godhead itself, or himself or herself, however you want to phrase that, nothing is really moving and nothing is really changing. But at the same time, beautifully and magically, all of this creation is also taking place. Now, as I said, morphologically, you can see that in the letter Aleph itself. The letter Aleph, when you change the sequence of the letters that spell the word for Aleph, for one, also spells the word Pella, which is wonder. So this is the wonder of creation, something that is created and that we experience as creation, but does not really take place at the same time. So it's the stillness and the motion, which of course is Shiva and Shakti. The stillness being Shiva, the unmoving consciousness, and then the movement of Shakti, of everything that's part of phenomenology and part of motion and part of the material world. Now, the second letter of this word for light is the Vav. Now, the Vav is basically a straight line. It's got a little comma at the top as well, again pointing at that mind, the Buddha mind, the mind of the creator, because in early Kabbalah often the process of creation is described as the Godhead thinking. The phrase often is he thinks thoughts, and that's just that. The thinking of the thought already is the process of creation, which is a different way of saying that the moment the light reflects, there is already creation. But at the same time, nothing diminishes, nothing changes when that happens. Just like when you light a candle with the light of another candle, the light of the second candle that does not diminish. The light of the first candle does not diminish just because you've lit another candle. As such, the reflecting light does not change the unmoved mover, even though, of course, there is creation as well. So there's the thinker and there's thought. And of course, the moment you say thinker, already thought is implied. But the thinker can also not think. So there's this dichotomy, which is not really a dichotomy, it's a reflection, like I said. So the Vav kind of is that coming forth of the Godhead. In early Kabbalah, the Vav as a letter is often described as the Godhead or the Father when he is being active in creation amongst the children, the children being the Sephirot after the first Sephirah, the first divine emanation. And in a Shaivite sense, that means that Shiva is active in your life, in everything you do, in everything you perceive, in everything you experience. It's not like you're looking for Shiva. It's not like you're searching for Shiva. It's not like you're growing towards Shiva. Shiva comes to you. Shiva is in you, and you are Shiva in that sense. That's the Vav. So as that shape, of course, it's a shape, it's a line, and in the Shaivite sense, that's the linga. In the Kabbalistic sense, that would be the pillar, and it would be the backbone. The backbone and also the channel through which all of the pranayama, all of the life force flows. Within the sense or within the setting of the 10 Sephirot of the Tree of Life, it's kind of the middle column. The Tree of Life has 3 columns, the right side having some Sephirot, some divine emanations, the middle side, and then the left side. The right side usually male, left side female, and then the middle side the balance, really, the equanimity between those forces. Now the Shaivite force as such, as Shiva being active, like I said, is the pillar, it's the lingam as well. Like I said, it's the channel through which the life force flows, but it's also in the other way the channel through which our prayers go back to the light. It's our connection with the divine, really. Of course, in the Kabbalistic sense and in the Hindu sense, this pillar is also the snake. It's the risen snake with the cobra at the top, which is also that head, that yud, that is, you can see reflected in the first letter of the alphabet. So in both traditions, the snake here is very important. And of course, in biblical stories, you can see the pillar being changed into a snake. And in Hinduism, you will never find a Shiva temple without a cobra. Almost, the Naga statues are everywhere, and the Naga symbol stretches beyond the Shaivite understanding of the religion. Of course, Vishnu reclines on a cobra as well, reclines on the cosmic snake. So the snake is everywhere, also in Buddhism. Now this Vav then is what comes forth after the Aleph of the first letter of the light. It's the light itself being reflected, and it's almost the reflection or the reflecting matter itself that's coming forth. It's the heart of the letter Aleph that's now being on its own journey and reflecting and creating. It's Shiva, the creator. Shiva is not only the deity of death, Shiva is the deity of creation as well. How can it be otherwise? Now the third letter of this word for light, the light that is being reflected and really is not reflected at the same time. The third letter is the Resh. The Resh has a shape like that. Very simple shape. It is also the 20th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and as such the 2 is an imprint of it. The 2 of duality, the 2 of the dual world. Not so much that the world is a dual thing, but the world as the second expression of the Godhead. There being consciousness and there being matter. So the consciousness again being Shiva, and then the matter, in this case, being Shakti. So the light also implies the coming forth of Shakti. The numerical value of the letter Resh is also 200, again with the imprint of the 2. Now, duality is often spoken of as something that needs to be overcome or that needs to be negated, and all those trains of thought. In Kabbalah, not really so. The word for blessing, for example, starts with the B, the beit, numerical value 2. The second letter, the resh, the same resh as the last letter of the light, the divine light, numerical value 200, and hence having the imprint 2. And then the chaf, with the numerical value 20, again with the imprint 2. So the numerical value of the word for blessing and to bless is 2, 2, 2. That's the blessing. So the duality is the blessing. It's not something that needs to be overcome. It's the active expression of the passive or not active Godhead, if you like. Both are divine, both are a blessing. Everything in creation, as far as that is concerned, is a blessing and is good. It's the thought processes that make distinctions. And that's also the idea of the dualism, really, that we think that we are different from the things that we are not. And that's the dual stance. Creation as it is, of course, is a unity, and it's all contained in that first letter, Aleph. All the mystical commentaries on the Hebrew alphabet really go back to the fact that the Aleph, as the one, contains everything. Now the 222 of blessing, 222 as its numerical value, as the gematria, of course is twice 111. 111 is the numerical value of the word Aleph, so the name of the Aleph, the first letter of the alphabet, Aleph, Beit. Aleph being the 1, Beit being the 2. So 111, again, also the wonder of creation, the wonder of duality that is in fact unity, and unity that contains that duality as the unmoved mover. But when the unmoved mover thinks or becomes the thinker, and then the thinking is implied, already becomes duality. Both always intertwined, both always the same, really. In India, it's very hard to find the lingam without the yoni, meaning to find the aleph without the beit. Now the other word I mentioned, first the light and then love. Love, ahava. Ahava in Hebrew, the first letter aleph, the same, because really we're looking at the same train of thought from a slightly different perspective. Now, whereas in the word for light, being more of a train of thought following the consciousness patterns, in the word ahava, we follow more the material patterns, so the patterns of creation, which in Kabbalah, as in Hinduism, is thoroughly feminine. So now we're in the world of Shakti. Now, of course, in the world of Shakti, we have different groupings of Shakti, groupings that in the Hindu sense also have deep meaning in the Kabbalistic sense. You have the 18 Maha Shakti, the big Shakti temples, power places, 18 being the word Chai in Hebrew, meaning life. So it's the source of all most creative powers of life. You have the 51 grouping of Shaktis in general, the 51 body parts of Sati. In the old, more esoteric traditions of Kabbalah, linked to the name An. An, very old esoteric name of God. Usually the unmoved mover, because the moment the unmoved mover moves, that the thinker thinks, the yud comes into place. The yud being that comma at the top and at the bottom of the aleph. The yud being the 10 as a numerical value, and hence being the 10 emanations of the Godhead, forming the entire tree of life. Now this concept of the yud being added to the ancient name An forms the word Ani. Ani is the word for I. And in the Hasidic traditions, often this is the mystical way back. It's linked to the mystical way back to the Godhead, to the understanding and the experience of the unity of life. Because if you change the letters Ani, the Aleph, the Nun, and the Yud, and you give it another order, it becomes the word Ein, which means negation. Negation not in the sense of judging that something is bad or something needs to be overcome, but more of the reaching of a certain level of consciousness where you see that everything that comes forth also goes back automatically, because we're talking about the inhalation and the exhalation of the cosmos, and consciousness follows these same patterns. So that's the 51 in the numerical value, 51 different Shakti temples. Of course, you also have the tradition of 108 Shakti temples, but that's a whole different matter. So in the word, ahava, the Hebrew word for love that I'm comparing to the Hebrew word for light, being similar expressions according to a different perspective. The first letter is the Aleph, of course. Again, the one. Everything starts and ends with the one. The second letter is the He. The He, very much like the Resh, but then with a tiny stripe at the bottom. The Resh was like this. The He has a tiny stripe there. So it's almost like the Resh again of the light, but then with the Yud in there. The Yud, like I said, being the 10 Sefirot. So really the expression of the tree of life in its full manifestation. Now the He is really the world of femininity. As a grammatical form, it means as a letter in grammar, it means that the word is feminine. So the letter He denotes femininity of a word. And in the tree of Sefirot, it has a specific meaning. Now the tree of Sefirot, as I've talked about in different videos, has 10 elements, so 10 emanations of the Godhead. Some that are male, some that are female on the left side, and some that are both male and female, the middle column. Now on the left side, it's feminine. The first of those ones on the left side is the third of the third of the 10 emanations, being Bina. Bina, the meaning of Bina being understanding. Now understanding is like femininity in a very abstract form. It's femininity as the mother before anything has been born, really. Also in Kabbalah, it's called the mother from which the subsequent Sefirot are born. Now this mother, in the name of names, which is the tetragrammaton, Yud, He, Vav, He, you can hear all the letters that I've mentioned are there. The Yud, He, Vav, He is the tetragrammaton called the name of names, really the seal on creation. It's the most important name. It's called the name. It's the name of God, but it entails everything. So the Yud being the highest, Sephira, but also the second one, Chochma, wisdom, because those two male concepts are very, very hard to distinguish between. Then the first He on the left side, Bina. And then the letter Vav that I talked about as the pillar, as the Shiva-inspired lingam, and also as the light coming forth and as the backbone of creation, has the numerical value 6 and combines the next 6 Sefirot, which leaves us with the last Sefira, the 10th one, and that's again in that name, a He. So the name, the tetragrammaton, the Yud He Vav He, comprises all the 10 Sefirot. And the first He is the mother, it's Bina. The last He is the daughter, which is Malchut, the kingdom, really our world. So basically in Kabbalah, and that's the difficult thing about Kabbalah, everything that happens in the theosophy of Kabbalah takes place before the creation of the world, which makes it hard concept to grasp and to place your thought there and to stay there while you're watching these processes happen before creation, which of course is possible mystically, but it's an interesting exercise. Now in the word ahava, you can hear it ahava. The last letter is a He as well. So like in the word, the tetragrammaton, the Yud He Vav He, comprising the tree of life, all of existence, the word ahava also has 2 He's. Now in the tetragrammaton, the one He is the mother, and the second He is the daughter. In ahava, it is kind of a similar concept, as in that there is always love for the mother, as in for the abstract femininity, and there's always a second love for the active femininity, and that's the spouse. Really in Hinduism, it's the spouse of the deity. So of course in Hinduism you have Durga, and with Durga we don't really talk about a consort. It's just the mother energy, the totality of Shakti, like in Kabbalah, the Shekhinah, the indwelling feminine presence. But that's all of it. And if it's being distinguished, if it's being like the consort, then we're talking about Shiva and Shakti. We're talking about Vishnu and Lakshmi. We're talking about Brahma and we're talking about Saraswati. All the deities, all the male deities have their feminine consort as well. So that we can see in the word for love. It's implied in the word for love that there's always two femininities. And the masculine force, which is the Shiva-inspired force, which is the indwelling force in between, combines or connects these two loves and makes everything flow. It makes for the flow of the feminine energy towards the final feminine expression as the consort of the male expression. In a more material sense. So you can see that also in the meaning of the letter and the number of the letter in between those two ha's in a, ha, va. The v is the bait. The bait has the numerical value 2, and that's the blessing also. It's the blessing of the reflection of the light, and hence the coming forth of the light. It's the blessing of the fact that the unmoved mover really moves, and that the thinker does think, even though in essence there is no motion, there is no thought, and nothing ever changes. And that realization is also love. The realization that those two parts of femininity are essentially one, and that it's the life force, the lingam really, which of course mystically means going through a state of mystical death, but that's a whole different story. But that's what the mystical practice would imply, that you go through the state in which there's no intervention of thought, and as such the more personal femininity will be linked to the more abstract femininity, and as such the 5, which is the numerical value of the letter he, the feminine letter he, by the vav, which also grammatically means the word and. So the 5 through the vav, which is and, is linked to the 5 and 5, and in that state of balance that becomes the 10. Now the 10 is the numerical value of the first letter of the tetragrammaton, the name of names, and as such there is total equanimity, there's total spiritual balance, and everything flows without any violence, because really in the end it's always about non-violence. Now finally, if you look at finally for this talk obviously, if you look at the total numerical value, at the gematria of the word for love, ahava, you will find that it is 13. So the aleph is the 1, the hey is the 5, the vav, the letter that combines things, that connect things, the father that's active amongst the children and makes for this just the possibility of life to exist and all these processes to take place. That is the 6, and then it combines with the 5. So 5 and 5, 10 plus 6 is the 16. 5 and 5, 10 plus 6. I'm talking about the tetragrammaton, and that makes the 26 for the tetragrammaton. 10, 5, 6, 5. But in the word for ahava, for love, we're looking at the aleph, the hey, the beit, and the beit being the numerical value 2. So 5 and 5, 10 plus 2 plus 1, 13. Now 13, very special number, as well as in Kabbalah, as in the setting of Hinduism. In the setting of Hinduism, of course, the 13 is the one after the 12. So from the Hindu perspective, we're focusing on the 12, which of course, because I started this talk about light, brings us to the linga of light, the 12 jyotir-linga. There are 12 jyotir-linga in India, and for the Shaivites and for the sadhus in general, the 12 is also the number of years that you would hold a specific tapasya, a specific vow for. So for example, there are sadhus that hold their arm up for 12 years and only then bring it down, that only eat fruit for 12 years, that don't sit down for 12 years. The 12 is hugely significant, but as a Shaivite, obviously the light, the linga of light, the 12 linga of light all over India form a unity. Now another word that has the same numerical value 13 is the word for one, and that's the third word I was mentioning at the beginning. So light, the more the male perspective and the unfolding of the unmoved mover. Then love, which is more the perspective of the feminine, of the Shakti, always being dual, always two partitions of that love. And then the unity that unifies those two concepts, the male and the female. Now, of course, what else could it be? The first letter of unity, of one, echad, is also the aleph. Cannot be but. So we have 3 alephs there. 3 times 1, 1, 1. Then the second letter of this, of the word for echad, is the chet. Now the chet is like that. Chet. The chet means the 8. It's the 8th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It's also the first letter of the second sephira, so the second emanation of the Godhead in the context of the tree of Sephirot, of the tree of life, as it's called. The Chet also being the first letter of life, Chaim. As such, the 8 is hectically important here, but in this case, as the first letter of Chokhmah, of wisdom, the second sephira, it is the Father. Now, I've already talked in the sense of the Father. I've talked about the Father being active amongst the children as part of the light, the divine light. And I've also mentioned Bina, the third Sephira, as the mother. Now, when the Chet, we're talking about the unity of the one, when the Chet of the Father combines with the Beit of Bina of the mother, we have a special outcome. The numerical value of Chokhmah, namely, is 73. The numerical value of Bina is 67. Together with the Vav that unites the two, remember that as a grammatical expression it means and, the total numerical value is 2 times 73, namely 146. Now 146 is the imprint from which the world flows forth. Now in Kabbalah, it's not so that we have a number and then we start from the number, start thinking about concept. It's the other way around. The number existed first, and from the number, things flow forth. So because these two numbers unite, and we get the number 146, the world automatically is born. World being Olam, and Olam also meaning eternity. Now, this world is not just the material world. It is, of course, seen as the material world as in the second letter of the Yud He Vav He, also the second He of the word for love, which is our material world, Malchut, the Hebrew word for kingdom. Kingdom also being the final of the 10 Sephirot. Now this Sphira Malchut is, like I said, it's our present world, but as the world, Olam, the 146 of those two Sephirot implying the father and the mother, Kabbalistically it also points at the word Ha-Ephes, which means the zero, or the zero of the He. So it also implies, again, that inhalation. We have the exhalation of the creation of the world, and then we have the inhalation, which is the cessation of the world. It's also like the atoms flashing out, in and out of existence, all the time being born and dying, and not dying as something negative, dying as something natural, because from death, life is born. So this is the same numerical value 146, and this concept of the world as the zero is connected to the entire book of Sefer Yetzirah, which I hope to one day dive into in these talks as well. Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, where 3 books are described, 3 mystical books with which creation was effected, and one of them is pertains to this mystical zero. Now, like I said, so the Chet of the second letter of Echad, of unity, of one, points to Chokhmah in this sense, the father, combined with the mother, making for all the following Sephirot, and making for the world the final expression of the tree of life. But like I said before, because it has the numerical value 8, the number 8 is important too. Now, as the 8th Sphira from above, because there's the exhalation and there's the inhalation, we can count from above and we can count from below. Really, because there is no above and below, it's more in and out. It's more like that motion. It's not a linear motion. So from above, the 8th Sphira from above is Yesod. Now Yesod Okay, so I have to rectify that. Of course, Yesod is the 9th sphera, but sometimes in all texts seen as the 8th sphera, because Keter and Chochma are very, very hard to divide. So as such, the 8th is the 9th, and that's a bit of a story as well. But the 8th in that sense would be Yesod. Yesod is the pillar, and kabbalistically, and the phallic symbol, it's the pillar, and it's the sephira through which the prayers are brought to the Godhead, and it's also the snake. There's lots of snake stuff in Kabbalah, and I've written a whole book about that, Zen and the Genesis of Tao, in which I describe more of all those implications and details of the snake within Kabbalah. Now, when counting from below, the 8th is Bina. So then we're back at the mother. So even though the Chet is the first letter of Chochma, it also implies the mother, because the father, of course, as a concept, the moment you have a father, you have a mother. You know, it's like when there's a thinker, there is thought. And when there's light, there is the reflection of light. The moment you start using concepts, the moment you start focusing on these things, they come into being. And that's the mystical power of the Hebrew understanding of the words and of the numbers as well. The moment they're filled with energy, they come to life. Hence, Kabbalah is a living science. It's not an abstract remembering of facts and then the application of those facts. So that's the second letter of Echad, of 1. Now, the third letter is the last letter, and that's the Dalet, and the D, Echad. The D is like that. It's a very simple shape, a bit like the Resh, a bit longer, and the top bit is a tiny bit longer. Numerical value 4. Now, as such, it is the 4th letter of the Tetragrammaton, the Yud, He, Vav, He, comprising the entire tree of Sephirot, and as such also pointing at the last Sephira, Malchut, our world. At the same time, it points at the 4 heads of Brahma, it points at the 4 Vedas, and most importantly, it points at the 4 holy rivers and the 4 most holy places. Now, this brings me back to Kabbalah and the biblical story of the Garden of Eden, where, of course, we also have the snake, the linga, the backbone, the power through which all life force comes down, and we also have a very important understanding of femininity, which is a positive understanding inside Kabbalah, in this Garden of Eden. But we also have the rivers, because it's stated that 4 rivers went forth from the one river in Eden. Now, those 4 rivers have specific names biblically. I'm mostly thinking about the 4 rivers that come forth around Mount Kailash, the home of Shiva. And as such, everything starts to become more affiliated with the stream of life, because none of these processes are abstract, are static. That's the word I'm looking for. They're all dynamic. So everything flows like the river. So at that last Dalet that ties everything together, because of the unity of the 4 that is the one, the 4-lettered name that really is the one, we also have those 4 rivers combining. We're standing there at the shores of the Ganga, and we are becoming Kashi, and we feel all that power of Shiva in Kashi, at the same time being at the dynamic force of the river, of that river that flows. We can feel the Ganga coming down on our heads and flowing through our essence, and we can feel that femininity and that masculinity become one, and we can live that. So that's the essence of Kabbalah as I understand it, and also the essence of mystical Hinduism, that actually we are those myths. Those myths are not separated from us. We do not read them and try to attain them or try to come closer to ultimate reality through them. They are what we are. We are mythical beings, and we can live that, and we can feel that. And as far as I'm concerned, that is our dharma, to become the gods we are. That's all I wanted to say on this topic. I hope it was interesting. Namaste.